Okay, hello everybody. So we are renewing our full funnel B2B marketing podcast, and this new season will be in updated format. So I'm going to invite folks from my community. So we'll make the podcast more interactive. They can ask questions in real time. They can talk to experts as well. My co-founder Vladimir joined the podcast, so it's not me alone anymore. And after the post, we have a fantastic guest. I wish this guest attended and spoke at our Full Funnel B2B Marketing Summit that I hosted months ago. But anyway, unfortunately, he couldn't, but I'm happy to have him today. So meet our guest, Dale Dupree, who is a founder of the Sales Rebellion. And before we'll start, I mentioned today we are going to chat about sales enablement. Before we'll start, I want to make a quick, intro to this episode and to the topic. So basically last year, I hosted a corporate workshop for a B2B manufacturing company and asked the CEO and head of sales to show up, because usually I run the workshops for marketing teams. Before the workshop, I gave each of them a clean sheet and asked to write down the number one goal they are focusing on right now. So here is coming the most interesting part. CEO wrote their company's goal is increasing market share and activating leads from a specific market segment. Head of sales told their goal is hitting the revenue quota, and chief marketing officer wrote the number one goal is preparing for the exhibition and updating a website. And the next question was about challenges. So sales replied, marketing doesn't help us in hitting the revenue quota. And marketing retorted like, we don't have any idea what sales and customers need. Sales don't talk to us. And this is exactly why I start all the corporate workshops with marketing and sales alignment. Because, if your marketing doesn't help achieve strategic business goals and doesn't help sales to hit the revenue quota, not leads, your company will always have a growth bottleneck. So if sales don't initiate the conversation, then marketing should initiate it. And I mentioned last month, I hosted a full funnel B2B marketing summit where day 4 was devoted to sales. And I talked to B2B sales leaders and asked what kind of help they expect from marketing. So the summit was blessed, but the only one thing that made me upset, as I mentioned, Dale didn't join us that time, and we didn't cover the sales enablement topic, which is quite important nowadays. So today we are going to fix it and chat with Dale how to create an effective sales enablement program and see his perspective as B2B sales leader on what marketing should be helping sales with. So thanks a lot, Dale, for joining us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, man. Thanks for having me on.
So let's start with a quick Blitz questionnaire, and you just need to reply with the first thing that will come to your mind. So let's start with the first question. Describe who you are and what you do.
Say it one more time, describe.
Yeah, describe yourself, who you are, and what you do. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a tall, handsome, bearded fellow out of the United States, particularly where Mickey Mouse holds his all of his acres of land. Orlando, in case anybody's trying to figure that out. I'm a sales trainer and coach. I've been for the last year and a half. Prior to that, I was in B2B sales for 15 years.
Okay, cool. What's your number one skill?
I would say that the thing that I'm the most effective at is being creative.
Okay. And what is the number one thing you hate about sales?
The bro culture inside of it.
Yeah, that's true. Me too. What is the number one book every B2B executive should read?
How to Get a Meeting with Anybody by Stu Heineck.
Yeah, Stu was. I had him on the summit, and this was really a fantastic session.
He was a great dude.
Yeah.
One of my mentors.
What is the number one thing marketing should help sales with, from your opinion?
Everything. and if you're not gonna ask the question in reverse, it's the same answer in reverse.
Cool. Okay. Can you make an elevator pitch of the Sales Rebellion?
Yeah, absolutely. We exist to tear down the castles of the old guard of the mediocre of the sales world and build a kingdom with the sales rebels that inhabit it. No longer do people have to be silent. The majority can rise up, and we can change the game in the way that the face of sales is perceived by our buyers as a unit altogether.
Cool. Thank you so much. So let's move to our main topic, the sales enablement. And nowadays, especially marketers, they use lots of marketing jargon, marketing slang, which is not clear to executives. So in last couple of weeks, I talked to several fellow executives, to some of our clients, and just asked their opinion. Can you please describe me, typical marketing, like buzzwords like outbound, inbound marketing, like performance marketing, growth hacking, etc. And most people from, I just analyzed their replies and they had no idea. They made just assumptions what do these terms mean. So let's describe in simple words, what is sales enablement?
Sales enablement, it's the process of providing salespeople or the organization with the information necessary in order to better understand the marketplace and their buyer in general. So it's content, it's tools, it's this idea of being able to develop and craft an ICP for yourself as a sales rep and also as an organization as well too. So it's kind of recon. If you really want to look at it from a high level perspective, it's recon into the territory to develop something again that is more high level than just, hey, here's some business cards, go find people that are auto mechanics and sell them our product. That's not sales enablement by any means, but giving people a much more diverse look into the territory so that they can understand that it's a living, breathing entity and not just a bunch of names that correlate to a commission check, right? But that it is a community that exists. And by having this concept of enablement at the forefront of your sales walk, just the word itself, I mean, people should look at the word itself and understand, what does enablement even mean to begin with? And the fact of the matter being that it is a support system for salespeople, which marketing plays a huge role in, and vice versa. So I believe that sales and marketing are one. That's one of my biggest attributes to the sales or in my sales walk, that being able to combine the two, right? Where I did not look at my marketing as separate from my sales. And because of it, I had major success in my processes. Because again, I think that what people lack is a system or a process in general. Instead, they have a very rigid structure that cuts you if you turn down the wrong way or hold it incorrectly, and is uncomfortable for other people in some cases, and just doesn't work in the name of building mutually beneficial agreements between the buyer and the seller.
Totally makes sense. And like major part of B2B companies, they don't have sales enablement programs in place. So how will you describe the benefits of the program, and probably describe why it's really important to the executive to get their buy-in?
Knowledge. It's all about, everything is about knowledge, based around knowledge. Like, you go to college to learn to become what it is that you want to be when you grow up, right? That's the concept. Like, throughout the process of your childhood, even, you're learning and learning and learning to become this functioning part of society in the first place. So and here's the best part, is that you go to college and you get a political science degree, and then you go and you work in like the landscaping world for 2 years, and then you're in retail for a year, and then you're at some company doing marketing, right? Or sales. That's how it ends up, right? Sales is the misfits of the world, in my humble opinion, and in a good way. That's why we started the sales rebellion, because we're grabbing them all and telling them that there's something bigger than what they've been lied about with sales in the first place. Lied to about, I should say. So this concept of sales enablement is knowledge. If we don't have the foreknowledge before we head out into a territory and understand that it is a community, that it is a living entity, that there are people in it, and that these are the things that they hold dear and near to their heart, their accolades, the true reason why they exist as an organization, who they serve, the experiences that they can provide for you, even through this concept of gained aptitude or knowledge, right? Where you can learn more from the people that you're prospecting than going to a networking event or hanging out with your great grandfather in some cases. And that's no knock on great granddads out there. Those guys are awesome. But again, the idea is that without some type of sales enablement process, how do we even know who John Smith is on the other side of these four walls in this building and what he could do for us? And we lose that entrepreneurial spirit as salespeople when we start getting into a regulated system. And the problem is that we go from this thing of like, oh, I want to build this massive business and I want to get so big and I want to make all this money, to like playing by the rules. Essentially, nobody plays by the rules who is successful. I mean, I was doing stupid shit all the time, like knocking on doors I shouldn't have been knocking on, where it clearly says like employee entrance only. And I wasn't being, malicious in doing so. When someone would come to the door, I'd be like, I'm not an employee. I'm just trying to find Linda. And I know she's back here and they won't let me through the front. And so I figured I'd knock, and people respect that kind of concept around aptitude and this ability to be able to build acumen in yourself as well too. I think that that's a big piece of the puzzle of what sales enablement truly is for people. If I would have just said, oh, I have 3,000 accounts in my territory, and gone out and just started knocking on doors, it would have been a waste of time. But instead I understood the players. I figured especially out who was going to use my product in a way that would be valuable for the next person, so that I could have a success story here and I could take it over to this next account as well too. So it was this chain reaction concept at the same time. But I think that it all boils down to knowledge. At the end of the day, that's what sales enablement truly is. It's giving us the wherewithal to understand our community better.
So just to wrap it up, let me know, please, if I'm correct. So the goal is to pick up specific accounts that you believe they might benefit from your solution. Next step is move them through entire customer journey from awareness, so they can understand how your product can solve the challenges. Next step is helping them to get maximum from your product, so you'll have a success story. You can document the process, you can create the case study, so you can share the similar value with accounts that have similar challenges, and that way you create this chain reaction. So basically you can prospect your area, your territory, if you will, that way. Am I correct?
Nailed it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Are you for hire?
Not at the moment, but who knows? I'm kidding, of course. I believe with Vladimir we are working on the Full Funnel Academy, so we'll create a marketplace of B2B marketers that will be available for hire. And actually, I want to ask you, how to create an effective sales enablement program from scratch.
So I think that this is a loaded question. A lot of people ask it of me. And I think that the first thing that you really need is somebody who understands it. And I truly do. So whether you hire a consultant or a coach or a mentor to come in and help with it, I think that it's important that you don't just pull a bunch of stuff off the internet or take some popular top 10 things that sales enablement companies or effective sales enablement looks like, right? I wouldn't necessarily listen to what's popular on the internet, right? Because if you do that, you also, if we listen to what's popular on the internet, we're all doomed in the first place, right? So we got to be very careful about, with sales enablement in general, just going out and saying, here's a list, let's make it happen. You have to really understand the ecosystem of what sales enablement provides. You have to really break down for yourself what it is that you want to accomplish, and not just, we're going to get our people better info so that they can close more sales. There's got to be a deeper root behind the whole thing, because what if they don't close the sale? Well, if we have a proper sales enablement system put in place, that account will be nurtured over the next 5 years after they lose the sale, and it will become an account at a later date. So there's a piece of sales enablement that goes back to a bigger picture that we have to understand. And so I think quite bluntly and blatantly that you should hire somebody to come in and help to build a sales enablement process. But I think really you need to sit down and look at, to figure out if you need it, to look at your existing system. And I bet that 90% of people that don't have a sales enablement process in place would answer the question that if they were to go in and look at their existing system, that they don't have one, to the point that they think that they do, right? if I were to tell you that a sales enablement process allows you to know X, Y, and Z about your buyer, and you went back and checked your process and your system, I bet you'd come back and go, no, we just know that the average sale is $10,000 and that this is the marketplace that we want to sell into. Well, how did you figure all that stuff out? Well, somebody sold a deal to a car dealership and it was really profitable. And so we just kept going after car dealerships. Like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. So again, I think it's an intelligence concept as well too, where we're building something that is very smart on the back end that enables everybody on the internal side, whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, whether it's post-sale, whether it's customer experience, to be able to be better.
Okay, that is clear. And can you share any example of successful sales enablement program you have created, or maybe you have seen that was implemented at some of your clients?
Yeah, I had two in the course of my two different jobs that I had before I started my own business. And I had to jerry rig them because they weren't necessarily processes inside of the company system. So I had to build them out for my own teams, and we had to do them ourselves. So the first thing is that if you don't have the resources, you have to become the resource. So sitting back and saying, all right, well, what is it that's most important as the lead? What is it that's most important for my people? So as a VP of sales, I sat down and said, okay, my people have lists, they have information, but how can I enable this? How can I allow them to have a deeper dive into the people that they're prospecting, to be able to create personalized touches so that they're not just cold calling, to be able to connect with people, to be more intentional with their outreach. And that's where I started building. So everything that we did had a purpose. You know, every single action that was taken with a prospect was purposeful. So we called it purposeful prospecting, right? And that was our sales enablement system, where we utilize platforms like LinkedIn, but we also utilized other social media platforms as well too. You know, like where the kids hang out. And like the whole point of doing that too was that we could really figure out who you were, or who you are even at that. You know, it's crazy. This is a crazy thought, but for people that are doing more of the reconnaissance side, when it comes to sales enablement and what they're creating, it's not just about going and finding a business blog from 2016 and saying that they were really hype about this one particular process, right? It's also about understanding that like you can go back to somebody's original Facebook profile picture that they put up, and like it tells you who that person was. It truly does. Right. You can have a 40-year-old friend and you can scroll back through all their profile pictures and see the first one they ever put up and be like, wow. Like, and that's the point of what the recon concept and sales enablement truly is. It's not just about finding some buzzwords and figuring out a couple things that your prospect is hype on. It's about really truly connecting with them. Right. So you find out that this guy started a chocolate factory at 21 years old, and now he's the CEO of a major manufacturing firm. You've got to bring up the chocolate factory, right? I mean, you have to. That's a real true connection there. And in the process of seeing what he's built, you can also find a very intelligent story that you can tell around how your product can be part of his journey as well, too. And so there's a whole nuanced concept around storytelling that can go into sales enablement that we built inside of our outreach process and that we built inside of our recon process that just made it super effective to where we would only prospect about 10 people at a time on a daily basis per rep. And we would get 8 to 9 of them on the phone or some sort of response, whether it was in person or via email, some sort of response, so that we had a directive. Even if only one of them was that, yes, we'll meet with you, we got responses. You know, like that was clever, or thanks for this, or, but my brother-in-law already sells me this stuff, or, you know, whatever the case may be. But because really sales enablement is about getting rid of KPIs and creating tangible results for your people, so that you don't have to sit here and measure their call log and how many emails they sent. That's pointless, garbage, trash sales. It has to be thrown away. So sales enablement truly brings the best out of your salespeople. And that's what I believed from the forefront. And anybody out there that's starting their own process has to have the same mindset. Do you believe in your people, and what are you trying to do to make them better?
That totally makes sense.
What
do you want to ask?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question. Back to the question, to the loaded question about how you start from scratch. So say somebody wants to work with an expert and they hire, for example, you, and to help them build a sales enablement process or system from the start. What is the typical process that you will go to with the client?
The first thing that you always start with a client on when you build these processes is, what are you doing now? So that we can get an understanding of where they're at. So one of the most important things is so like if you're doing this yourself and you're not using someone, utilizing someone that has the knowledge in this, you have to meet yourself where you are as well too. But you have to hire somebody that's not going to come in and say, all right, everything's broken, let's fix it. They have to meet you where you're at, because you're running a successful business most likely already. And this is just a complementary piece. You know, maybe you're doing 20 million a year, 100 million a year, right? You can be doing a lot of revenue and not have a good sales ops program put in place, you know, from an enablement perspective. So the most important thing is meeting people where they're at and really just understanding, how did you get where you are? And in the process of that, you find all the kinks. You'll see all the twisty tied, you know, ridiculous pretzel, you know, knots that everybody's put together throughout the process that give you a headache just listening. So you've got to know that the person that you're speaking to is having the same type of pain in that process. And it's an easier look from the outside in at that point to be able to say, not to say like, oh, I have an opinion on this, but to say, I know what can fix this. More so, because it's one thing to have an opinion on it, another thing to really recognize what the true fix will be. Because in some cases, you can't fix it. You just have to complement the crap you're already dealing with, basically, because if you try, you'll lose half your employees, you know, just in the change itself, right? So it's a particular process. People have to be a little bit more conscious of what it is to begin with, right? It's not just buying HubSpot, you know, like, oh, we have this sales enablement, you know, process now that we built through a CRM that's also doing our marketing. Like, no, it doesn't work like that, right? It is a deep dive into what it is that you're currently doing, so I can meet you where you're at, so that we can build something that feels more natural inside of your current system, so your people don't lose their minds and your best people stop coming to work.
And what is a typical time frame when it comes to develop and sales enablement?
I truly think that you should always be developing your sales enablement process. So I think it's a quick 30 to 60 day concept to be able to put the infrastructure in place, but then it's a lifelong existence that is always evolving. I think that you should look at your sales enablement processes at least every 12 months from that perspective. Depending on what it is that your complex sales, you know, you're selling something that's more traditional, something that's more of a commodity. Just depends on what kind of segment you're selling out of as well too, right? Because sometimes, you know, a sales enablement process can exist of just essentially having two types of roles inside of the sales organization, one that's very much focused on marketing and enablement, and one that's very much focused on account management. And sure, you could have a million other roles inside of there too, but I believe in the account managers being more of a full cycle sales rep to begin with, and that enablement ops and marketing can help tremendously with inbound and with outbound. So I feel that there's a really good piece there that creates the synergy that then creates an existing ecosystem that every year you can just look at it and say, well, let's change this and this, because you're already living it every day. So it's important to just be super present inside of what you create. But long answer, short question, 30, 60 days to get the infrastructure in place. And then from there, a lifelong process that you're dedicated to.
Okay, makes sense. And what about the minimal tech stack? What do you need what kind of software you need to create, let's say, an MVP version of your sales enablement program?
I really don't think you need more than a couple different programs in your tech stack. I've seen some people that have an enablement process that, you know, have up to like 10 different steps that they're using or taking to create what it is that they have. But I truly think that a lot of it can be utilized around existing sites, you know. So for instance, like Google can be part of your sales enablement process. Using Google Alerts can be a huge piece of that process, and using systems that are already in place, like Sales Navigator, even that can notify people on the go and on the fly inside of your organization around changes around new developments, around anything that can help, again, with this idea of knowledge around your territory and what you're selling into. So disruptors that are coming out of the woodworks, Tesla making a $25,000 vehicle. If I sell into that space, I need to know these types of things. I need to have these things at the forefront. Relevant content and information, for the salespeople. So I think that first and foremost, it's about utilizing what's already in existence. And then having a CRM is extremely important to create cadences around that as well too. Having some type of marketing enablement software as well, in your stack is extremely important. Even having tie-ins to those stacks as well that can help to manage them, which sounds crazy, but a lot of times inside of a CRM, for example, it can just get extremely convoluted in this process if we're trying to build an enablement process, right? It can get very convoluted. So having something separate that we can build sequences around, and that we can identify an ICP, stick that person, into a sequence themselves, and kind of allow it to be more natural inside of the process, as well as we continue to work toward better knowing our prospect and getting to that end result with them. So I think there's a bigger picture to all these questions. It's not easy to answer. I wish I had an easier answer for most of it in most cases, but I think that's the beauty of it, is that we shouldn't be looking for quick fixes. We shouldn't be saying like, yeah, you need these 10 programs or these 2 programs. What we need to understand is that each person that develops and builds a sales enablement program is going to be different. And because of that, we need to recognize that they're going to be different. And we need to respect that, and we need to be able to meet people, like I said earlier, where they are in their process, to help them to feel comfortable about the changes, because really who this complements more than anybody is the buyer, and it shapes the landscape of traditional sales because of it. People stop saying things like, I hate salespeople, because of these types of infrastructures that we can put in place. And that's crucial. If my son is going to be a salesperson in 20 years, it's crucial that we start to affect that change, so that people don't look at him as a scummy, slimy piece of shit. Because that's how I was viewed as a copier person. Scum. Oh, you're a copier guy. I mean, it was embarrassing sometimes to tell people what you did. It's why I created a personal brand, and why I created these processes in the first place, to be able to get to know people from a human perspective through the elements of basic communication and knowledge of others, so that you can show compassion, empathy, and ingenuity at the same time.
Love it. Thank you so much. And the last question from my side, which I want to discuss today, when it comes to tangible results, so you mentioned you created 2 programs, and what were the tangible results that you can share? So it can be, increased revenue, or like shortening sales cycle, or whatever.
Yeah, I think that it can shorten a sales cycle. I'll say that. And it did in many of our outcomes, but I think that it also allows you to get a handle on the long game, that you don't give up on an outcome at an early stage, that you continue to pursue it instead of searching for something that builds on and creates instant gratification, but instead that you have a vision and you have foresight in the process through sales enablement as well too. I mean, we were the number 1 branch, inside of the firm. And for the second firm that I was with, year over, when I took over the organization, or took over the structure for their region, what happened was we went from the number of net new acquisitions, so a net new business that came on board with our organization, never done business with us. The increase was over 700% year to date, that we had created through our efforts of having a program and process in place like that. So massive results if you put your mind to it.
Thank you so much. I just have one more question, if I may.
Sure.
So I'm just thinking about our listeners, and, often case you may listen to a session and just walk away, inspired, thinking, but if there would be like one thing that you would want people who listen to the show to do concretely, today or next week, what would that be?
I think that this whole topic starts with ourselves, right? It starts with our own vision. It starts with our own passion. It starts with the way that we communicate with others. It starts with the way that we stop kind of just stepping to the side and allowing things to happen that we know shouldn't be in the first place, but instead it allows us to take, or it puts us in a place of taking a hard stance and maybe being a little unpopular in the way that we that we view some things inside of sales, but it's necessary. There's necessary change that needs to happen. And so I would tell people to sit back and start with themselves more so than anything. It's not about sales enablement as much as it's about connecting with other human beings. Can you even comprehend that when I say that? That's a question to ask yourself. Man, no, that's kind of hard from a business perspective. I could do it at around a fire with my friends, but that's kind of hard from a business perspective. You need to challenge yourself on these things because sales is no different than life. And the more that we separate these two things, the more that we create these stereotypes, they become cop-outs is what they really become. Oh, it's just business. Bullshit. People need to start taking, putting skin in the game and taking real serious action toward what it is that we're building as a community. And they need to start caring about that community and not just themselves and their commission check, but checking themselves in the process and really making change for the sales world.
I love it. I love it. Thanks a lot for sharing your wisdom today. And I believe we nailed the topic. Meanwhile, for our listeners, if you are curious, guys, where you can find Dale, check his LinkedIn profile. He regularly posts on LinkedIn, regularly shares great content when it comes to sales enablement, etc. And as well, check the salesrebellion.com. So if you are curious about the programs, if you are curious about the sales coaching and the sales enablement programs, this is probably the best place where you can learn more. So thanks a lot for joining us today. I believe that was an extremely valuable session. And you guys, of course, our listeners, please share your feedback in the comments, either on iTunes or Google Podcasts or Spotify, whatever. Doesn't matter where you are listening to this show, so we are curious to hear your feedback. So thanks a lot for joining us, guys, Vladimir, Dale, and see you guys in the next episodes. Cheers.